Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Growing Your Insurance Agency with Microsoft 365. For those of you joining us today that may not be familiar with Kite Technology, we are a managed IT services provider and consulting firm, and we specialize in serving independent insurance agencies across the country. We have been in business for more than 29 years. And what sets Kite Tech apart from other IT providers is that expertise we have in the insurance industry. We have many staff who have actually worked in the industry, have worked in agencies. So it gives us that extra insight into what agencies today need to be successful and operate at a really high level. You can see some of our services listed here. And if you have any questions or if you see something that you'd like to learn more about, please reach out in the question panel, or you can send us a message after the webinar. We'd be happy to set up some time and just get to know your agency and see how we can help. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Adam, and we'll get started on our presentation. Adam, it's all yours.
Thanks, Eleni. Appreciate the intro there. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for being here with us today. My name's Adam Atwell. My job function here is to set kind of our Microsoft Cloud solution vision, along with other cloud solutions. Worked here for almost 10 years. I don't quite have credit for the decade, but I'm working on that. So we have a lot of content to cover, so I'm going to just go ahead and dive right in. For starters, here's a quick snapshot of what we're going to cover today. Technology strategy, modern workplace, collaboration, and client engagement. Those things kind of coupled up together are really just a definition of what your agency should be looking at, for tomorrow, how you can grow your business inside of Microsoft 365 really tangibly. These are things that translate to the way you do business, the way you can do business better, the way you serve your clients. The other pieces there of security and compliance, growth and scalability, and next steps are really the foundations for things you might not know you need to do or happened in the background, or things that will help you grow and mature so you can do it better, more effectively, and at scale and size. So let's start by jumping into the technology strategy. Overall, I think people downplay the amount of effort and priority that goes into a well-developed plan. Strategic planning is a forefront of mostly everything we do here at Kite Tech, and we spend a lot of time talking and developing strategy. And we find that if you chart it well, you end up having a much easier time with the execution and the ongoing maintenance of those changes. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about the technology strategy as it relates generally to the world, if you will, and of course, the insurance agency. Daily things that are missed. First and foremost is, it's more than just buying a product off the shelf and consuming it. This thing is true for almost every industry, but the priority and opportunity for insurance agencies, especially being stewards of managing risk and helping manage business and protect life, those kinds of things, the bar is higher for us there. So you really need to develop a mindset of, I'm not just going to buy something and use it, but I'm going to consume it and also iterate on how I can use it better, right? So get that mind frame as a starting point. Second piece is that you definitely need to plan for the changes and the business impact. A lot of folks just jump in with 2 feet, and sometimes that works well, and you can get things done. But almost inevitably, we find that if there's a well thought out plan and you execute on it, communicate it, you'll find that the impact on the business is much less, and it's a much smoother transition through the process of the change. Lastly, the other piece of the strategy, of course, is to budget for the costs. It's not just about buying, in this case, the Microsoft 365 license that you need. It's about more than that. It's about the road to get there and the ongoing things associated with real hard dollars to keep your business running. So let's take a look at a specific framework for the overall strategy, if you will. And this is a framework that we use in approaching customers and helping them with their Microsoft 365 journey. The top line there is something that likely, is obvious. So this is a theme in things we've shared in the past. Step one, identify the key stakeholders. Who are they? Who's going to help drive that vision right through and support it? Inside of that, identify and prioritize the scenarios that you have. What are your goals here? What problem are you trying to solve? What challenge do you have? What's the pain points, said another way? Then from there, you're going to start to create that plan and execute on that plan, right? And then, of course, you're going to measure how well you did execute on that plan, as well as share that success, iterate on what you learned and improve it, right? The cycle then starts over again. So that's a basic adoption approach. And most folks, again, don't really think about all the value here that comes inside the Microsoft 365 offerings, but it's really intentional that you look at a process like this and continue to ask these questions in this way. Building on that foundation of that 4-step approach, let's talk about some practical scenarios of how you might step into that. So early adoption with champions or maybe strategic partners in the change inside your organization are very important. So maybe this is your management team or department heads, and getting them into these tools first, putting them through some trial runs, right? Identifying what worked well, what didn't, what differences maybe for your different respective lines of business. Personal lines might use it in this way, but commercial lines might use it in a slightly different way. Being collaborative about those different things you learn inside those early adopts. Some people call it beta testing. And I think beta testing and adoption of kind of early adoptions, a softer word, if you will. But it's really important to give things a trial run, give them a test, and make sure you can understand and kind of quantify the value a little bit more beyond the thought of what you're defining in your adoption approach. And then, of course, as you start, whether you're starting with, hey, we want to just do chat better in Teams, or we want to just share files in OneDrive and SharePoint, then you're going to, kind of broaden the scope maybe and iterate on what your plan is. Maybe you want to take on Teams, you want to, do SharePoint and OneDrive all at the same time. And then, of course, you're going to kind of collaborate on that and, take what you learn there and iterate that as well. So that's kind of the business scenario. The next stage of communication and training, this is something that is so important and a lot of times really overlooked. And it makes all the difference in a successful adoption and enablement really of your employees to empower them to embrace this technology and really put it to work for your business. So, first that champions program we talked about, the folks that are going to use your products, learn them, teach you things about them. Those champions are essential in the process. Obviously, you want to have a communication path that goes between the stakeholders, the champions, and of course, the champions community at large. And that's a constant conversation, whether it's a weekly, biweekly, monthly check-in or a chat on maybe on Teams or your communication platform. So that's essential, that ongoing communication at different levels. And then, of course, you're going to launch organization-wide communication, training events, and success stories about how you're using these tools, right? The communication, some folks call it socialization of these changes, is so important. And getting the feedback from your users, your customers, right? Folks you do business with, makes the value drive even further. So then there's the role of IT in this overall planning process and really kind of governance of these tools, or kind of looking at these tools and making sure you're using them in the right way and getting the most out of them, right? So IT's job today is more than just keeping the lights on, if you will. There's a proverbial and a physical light switch over there on the wall. But you really want to recognize that IT, if used well, can enable the business to grow and be strategic in the business mission. If IT is aligned with business goals, it's not just a support function, it's actually a team effort. And so making sure you have clear buy-in across your team and you're working cooperatively, making IT a part of the strategy, not just kind of telling them what to do. Sometimes folks do that. But inviting them into the conversation and asking them for help. You know, the reality of these tools is they're so complex that everyone has to partner together to learn them, to use them. And it's everyone's responsibility. It's the shared responsibility for learning and growing and getting that value. In addition to that, you know, you're in the process of kind of looking at those responsibilities and changing them. You're going to come with, you know, kind of the view of what tools you're using today and what you need to use tomorrow. Inside of that, you're going to, you know, look at your third-party tools you're using. You're also going to find ways to provide data about usage. How much are folks using Teams? How many emails went out to unsecured carriers because they have an automatic processing system for renewals, those kinds of things, right? We want to be able to surface that data and hand it back to the business to make business decisions on. And then, of course, IT securing kind of mobile apps and how they're used. This is a really high level strategy that can be applied to a lot of scenarios, but specifically as it relates to the Microsoft 365 launch strategy, you can look at this at a really complex level like this. Maybe your business is 20 users and maybe you don't have one site IT. Well, this model might look very different, right? Maybe you're 50, maybe you're 100, maybe you're approaching 300. You know, depending on what level of complexity your business needs are, will vary how many of these things you want to do. You at least want to have touch points on all of them. It's just a matter of how much investment in time based on the scale in which you're doing it. So that's a small view of a strategy for a launch. Let's talk about the budget. So 4 pieces of the budget are, you know, a lot of these are, it may seem obvious, but I think they're probably overlooked or undervalued in terms of, you know, the costs and the reality of them. First of which is the legacy environment. So legacy environments are costly to maintain. You have to purchase them up front. In addition to purchasing them up front, you have to maintain them, right? And that responsibility. Those legacy environment pieces are real. Sunk cost up front. To scale it, you have to make additional capital investment, and then you never get those dollars back that you spent if your business needs change, like in the scenario of a seasonal workforce, right? Maybe during the holidays, you increase your workload or different renewal time. As you ramp up and ramp down in those changes, legacy environment investments are sunk costs that you can't change, and you have to pay them typically up front. So that's the legacy environment. Some of those costs are real for what you all know in doing your jobs today. But a lot of times what people don't realize is the cost to maintain those legacy environments over time, right? Let's say, for instance, an old line of business application that you used to use in a local environment. Well, now you need to access that data, let's say for 7 years or 10 years. Well, how much will that cost? I'm not sure, but it's worth considering that cost and asking the question, well, what if we brought that data out of the legacy system and imported it into the new management system? Weighing those values and costs and being aware of the legacy environment as a whole. And then also, of course, putting a clock on it so you can budget and plan for its decom, or if necessary, you know, the upkeep of keeping it there. Then there's hard costs. Hard costs are pretty easy from an accounting perspective. It's typically nowadays a license cost for each of your FTEs or full-time employees, right? Sometimes part-time employees or maybe different job roles like frontline workers, people that are in the field may have slightly different costs, but typically there's a per user per month cost associated with almost everything that's modern management today. And so those hard costs are pretty simple. as it relates to the Microsoft side of things. You buy what you need and you pay for it monthly. There are some other, things that maybe you might need. You might need to bring in a third-party solution here and there, perhaps a Zix for encryption because your business has been doing that, or you really like that Barracuda archive and you're not ready to make the change, those kinds of things. And so those other hard costs may be in addition to those Microsoft licenses. So then there's the migration effort. The migration effort can be seen in two different lights. One is just move the data. Can you just, get my email off of that server that's dying and, we keep over by the fridge and it shares the same receptacle as the fridge. Can you just kind of like get that email up into the cloud for me? And those files, like, I don't really care. Can you just move them? Yeah, sure. We can do that. We can move the files and the email. That's pretty easy. But then there's time there and there's cost there. But the other side of the migration effort that often gets overlooked is actually the time in planning the effort of doing it well. 1, 2, preparing your users for the impact of those changes, of course. And then lastly, planning for the downtime if it comes, or being ready and strategic about when you have busy seasons or, slow seasons, that you could find the time to make the changes and keep the business moving forward. All of those things go into the migration effort. Again, more than just moving the data, if you will. Last cost really that gets overlooked and kind of is yep, I did it, we're good to go kind of deal, is the training process and the adoption. So training is a word that, we've always used in that, hey, I'm going to just kind of train this guy up and Adam's going to be able to do his job and that's fine. And he'll just keep working along. Well, training is a concept of yesterday if it's not bolted on with adoption. And then engagement is the last piece, because it's a digital workplace or a modern workplace, not just a physical workplace anymore. And so the cost of training, as in building skills into your team to use the tools you give them, 1, and then 2, adopting them. Adoption really is a standardized approach in the way you use those tools, uniform processes that support your business requirements that get wrapped into how you use it each and every day. And then, of course, the engagement is just the community aspect inside of these tools and using them. Those last pieces of training, adoption, and engagement really are dollars that a lot of people just don't plan for. Some of them just put the assumption on their team that they'll figure it out, and they don't value preparing them for it. And I would argue in most cases, to do it well, you need to at least consider 2 out of 3 of those things. Maybe the engagement portion will happen organically on its own, but training the whole, continuing to train the whole, and then monitoring the adoption and use, and then perhaps the engagement will happen on its own. So that is kind of the budget factor. I want to cover a piece or two on kind of these hard costs, if you will. A lot of times we'll get folks that will say, hey, I got that Microsoft 365 thing. We're good to go, Adam. We're ready. We've been there. We've been using it for 2 years. And they're kind of talking about the cloud services aspect there under Business Basic. And they say, yeah, we've been doing Teams. We've been doing the email thing. And they are, surely. But I'll ask them, hey, your line of business app, whether it's maybe Epic or AMS 360 or any other management system, it's going to have an email integration, right? So I'll say, okay, great. Are your desktops all ready to go? They have the latest Office patches. Well, what do you mean? We're running Office 2010. And I'll say, oh, well, that's not supported anymore. I'm not even sure how you're pulling that off. And certainly your line of business app won't integrate well with it, right? So yesterday for the Business Basic, now the evolution to kind of having those desktop apps in that 1250 model, that was kind of an assumption of yesterday. It took folks a little while, but they recognize that they need to continually pay for services and the apps as they change, right? And so that was the premise for a long time. And a lot of folks are in one of these 2 buckets of basic or standard, but a lot of people don't realize what they're missing out in the business premium and the need for it. It's a hike. It's a $10 more per person. But when you look at what you get with it, which is the advanced security and modern workplace management that wraps around it, these are things your business can't go without. There's security, there's compliance, and then there's protecting all the places where your users live, breathe, and do work on your behalf. So common misnomer, yes, we have Microsoft 365. Yes, we're using it. And I would almost guarantee that even if you are in business premium, there's pieces there you're not leveraging to their full potential. So that's just a piece on the hard costs. One other note there, we've asterisked it. It's the price increase that's due out in March. Business premiums going up to $22 per month. One other piece on kind of simplification of that technology investment from a budget standpoint, from a cost, overall monthly cost, as well as from, kind of a support perspective is, yesterday kind of pulling all these tools together, you'd have, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 different solutions that wrap together, and you have all these pricing, increases that add up. It's kind of like, the model of, well, hey, I used to pay Comcast for that $100 internet, but I went to streaming, and now I have 6 streaming providers, and it's $150 or whatever it might be, right? Same concept here. Microsoft's giving you practically, in most cases, everything you need to do your business for $22 a month per user. And that cost and capability you get in that product today for an SMB or a medium-sized business, that costs yesterday. And when I say yesterday, I mean pre-COVID, about, was it 2019 or 2020? I've lost track of time, is when they came out with business premium. But the capabilities that we have today in these tools cost nearly twice as much a year and a half ago. So what that tells us is that Microsoft is taking SMB really serious. They're investing in it, and they're bringing these tools from the enterprise down and making them affordable so they can support, small and medium business. So that's a snap-on strategy and the pieces of it. Let's talk about this thing called the modern workplace. I'm going to take a sip of this water. Excuse me. Thank you for that pause. What is this modern workplace? Well, if you haven't heard the term, it's just kind of, a buzz phrase, or whatever you want to call it, a way to describe the changes in the workplace we've seen as we've shifted to a remote work model or hybrid work model. Microsoft defines their strategy inside of Microsoft 365 as what's called the modern workplace, because all the tools are centered around modernizing the way we use and consume our technology, right? Let's talk then about these challenges inside of, the small business today. So first and foremost, how can we be distributed, better? How can we work across multiple locations, right? That's the first problem. How do we maintain security and, inside of all these places where we work, right? Mobile, personal devices, corporate devices. And then, of course, how do we do that and reduce our cost, or at the very least, maintain our cost and increase our capability, right? These are serious problems, especially for the world we live in today. Distributed work is more of a requirement than it's ever been. Security and threat vectors continue to grow. And then lastly, the requirements that it takes to just run your business will continue to inevitably grow as well, right? And so these are real challenges that we have here in the small business. Here's a quick snapshot of kind of where we were yesterday, if you will. We used to live inside of one building, maybe a couple for some of us, right? But inside there, all the people lived there. We didn't live there, of course, but we worked here. I'm here now in our offices in Owings Mills. There was a local environment, probably a server in the back room. Maybe you ran Applied TAM. Maybe you ran something else, whatever your agency management system was. You probably ran some flavor of Windows Small Business Server, and that kind of controlled your machines, and it held your files and did your print stuff. And then when you're out of the office, maybe you use that VPN client to get back to it. Man, was that a pain in the buns. And then, of course, you had a phone system. Avaya IP office is a super popular phone system that's been around for a long, long time. And so that was yesterday. Inside one place, the investment, you buy it up front, right? Maybe you leased it, but you don't own all that equipment and it'd be inside your building. You have the certainty of, I locked the door, I have the keys to these doors. It has a real, comfort knowing of physical proximity and security, right? Well, then these challenges really started to accelerate for the business, right? We need to be able to do more. We need to work outside the office. We need to be able to work remotely. We need to interact from the data from wherever we're at. We need to get access to our files. And then when the global pandemic came, it was made even more real than it was yesterday. It went from being a goal, to being a requirement to get out of the building, to move to what the new work experience looked like. And here's a little cool slide animation there. The new work is work from anywhere, right? Employees working from home and remotely, from personal devices, mobile devices. And what does that mean? That really means it translates to extra value, where you can do that work from anywhere, but it also has increased security risks, right? Rough numbers, these are from Gartner, and Microsoft commissioned them to do some studies, and 74% of companies intend to shift to some employees to remote work permanently. That's a little bit dated at this point. I would say that has evolved beyond the some employees to remote work permanently and grown to the majority of the employees wanting to remotely work. Put the context for us here. When the global pandemic hit, we went from being a business office of 3 suites, however many thousand square feet we have here. We are a company of about 30, and we had probably at the time 25 of us, maybe that number's off a person or two, but about 20, 25 folks that came in this office every day. When it hit, we dropped down to 3 of us, really. 2 of us on the front end. I was one of them, because I have 2 kids at home and 2 cats and a wife, and I just couldn't work at home. I love them all, but no way I was going to do it. I said, I'm going to get arrested and get a fine from the police before I'm going to actually work from home. I wasn't going to try to do it. So anyways, we now have literally 85% of our staff working from home. And some of them, home is not even geographically close. It's other states across the US. And now we can look at that as a strategy for how we grow our employee base. We don't need to look locally anymore. We can look for talent across the US and even across the world. That's what the new work norm looks like. And of course, that data, Microsoft Applied, AMS, whatever your agency management system is, it all lives inside of the cloud, right? A couple more stats here around it. The urgent mandate to enable secure remote work came, of course, because of the pandemic. We've heard so much about the pandemic, and I'm sick of saying it, but the reality is that created an opportunity to evolve the use and modernization of the workplace. And I've seen so much benefit from it, even with all the changes. 66% of leaders are saying that they want to redesign their workspace, their workplace, their offices to support hybrid work, right? 87% of folks are saying they're more successful, employees are, when they're being enabled to make decisions for how to use technology, right? Empowering your folks to be productive with these tools, teach you how to use them. And then lastly, with the changes in moving and mobility, we're talking about purchasing more devices, maybe because you need one in the office and one at home, or purchasing laptops or notebooks to support things. In addition to that, we're also talking about use of mobile phones and personal devices. So a lot of changes for the modern workplace. I want to take a minute to get a little bit technical and talk about, a practical requirement or issue that SMB has faced and our agencies are facing that we support and partner with, and a solution as well. So this is the case of work data on personal devices, right? Number of about 64% of SMBs allow employees to access work data on personal phones and computers. So many of you probably have, if I asked for hand raises, I'd probably have about a 50% hand raise for folks that have some form of a mobile device use policy. Surely probably you have the policy for, an acceptable use policy as it relates to technology. But, that next level is the mobile device use policy. Not all agencies have that. Well, that policy yesterday looked like this. Do these things, don't do these things. If you're going to use personal, you have to acknowledge that the company may do these things. We may wipe your phone. We may see some of your personal devices, all those things, right? That's how it looked yesterday. And you can see here's the visual of the phone. And, work data was there, personal data was there. And after you enroll in access to work data, then the company has the liability of seeing personal data, or the end user could potentially save corporate data unintentionally to personal storage, right? So then let's look at this model tomorrow with a feature called app protection policies in place. Here you can see the top of the phone says managed apps. These applications are managed through controls and policies we put in place using Microsoft 365. We say, hey, the data that lives inside Outlook and Word and Excel, that is corporate data. We govern the rules on that. You can't move it to your personal apps. You can't send it down there to Firefox. You can't send it to Skype. Why? Because let's hope Skype's got put to bed. Anyway, right? Teams can be protected. All of the core Microsoft apps where your data lives can be protected and managed. And you can take on allowing personal device access with the confidence and assurance of security of your corporate data on that device without taking on the risk of managing it. That's just one small piece of value that comes from the modern workplace as it relates to devices. The foundation really for what kind of the pillars that support this remote work foundation is one, standardized security. So the security lens looks the same through each person. We don't have special rules for all the people. That's where risk gets increased and liability gets increased. We have a single set of rules for the majority, and then we deal with the exceptions if they're there. When it comes to device setup, it's faster. PC setup yesterday, a computer setup, a deployment maybe would have taken between 4 to 6 hours. Right now, we're deploying machines. Users are getting them. They take 20 minutes. After those initial 20 minutes, the users can get to work. Of course, there's some things we need to do in the background, but the thought that a new employee got hired, we bought them a device, they just started using it literally for 85% of what they need to do for a daily task is crazy to think about. It's a game changer. In addition to that, the other foundation, of course, is a cloud-first mentality rather than that legacy environment and infrastructure. It's cross-platform support across Windows, Mac OS, Android, and iOS, right? The standard apps or the standard operating systems that people live and breathe on. And then, of course, it's flexibility in personal devices or corporate devices. These next slides on client engagement and collaboration, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these because, I want to make sure we leave enough time for questions. And if I'm honest, I think at this point, if you don't really get an understanding of kind of the core functionality of what a platform like Teams or Zoom or, WebEx Teams or Slack, even any of those collaboration platforms, if you will, if you're not using one today, I'd be really surprised. But these are things that I think are table stakes here, chat collaboration, meetings and calling. These are things you're probably already doing, right? And you've probably been doing for a while. So I'm going to skip past a bunch of features and, things. Teams is, the bottom line is this: Teams, included in the Microsoft platform here, has the opportunity to do a lot of work right from within it. And it's a cornerstone to how you collaborate, right? I'm just going to talk then about what's next for collaboration as a whole and what's different, right? Collaboration yesterday looked like this. Hey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go talk to Bob and refill my water because he sits beside the water cooler, right? That's what, yes, part of it. Or maybe I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call Bob, okay, with my desk phone. Or maybe I'll call Bill. It really doesn't call Bill or Bob. It doesn't matter. That's what it looked like, right? You would go there or you'd use those platforms. Now today, it looks very different. And really this kind of merging, if you will, of ways to communicate under a single platform is really what's coming. A single communication platform, Teams as a communication platform. It's, individual chat messages, it's departmental chat messages, it's company-wide chat. It's all of those things at those different scales for video meetings, right? One-on-one videos, department meetings on videos, company video meetings. In addition to that, you can service not only internal, you can do it for your clients, right? So you're doing video, you're doing chat structured inside of your business departments. Great. In addition to that, one other extension is actually a telephone system. You could bring your telephone system into Teams, or you can use Microsoft's first party Teams, Microsoft 365 Business Voice telephone system. We actually use that in a couple of departments here and have been for a while. So a single communication platform, real-time communication platform in one place, not three different tools, just one. Great opportunity. That is kind of what we're seeing, a single place to do all the things. Virtual meetings at scale, right? Yesterday, it used to be a call like this, maybe, but with one person on the other end. Now it's more common to see larger scale of virtual meetings and even preference for virtual meetings because they can be more efficient. And then we're even seeing interactions with communities or customers at large there. And so thinking about how you can leverage that and challenge your organization to connect in those ways to reach your customers and do your business, that is an opportunity in itself. The last piece that I think most folks are starting to see in one way or another is how to support the hybrid meetings. As people return back to the workplace physically, you'll need opportunities for conference rooms or gathering spaces that you can still interact with people in a virtual way as well. So that's kind of most of what's important for the collaboration and client engagement. Now I'm going to jump to security and compliance. These are things that can be pretty heavy. I'm going to try to keep it light. But these are topics that need to be taken seriously. And let's find out why here. Well, I'm sure everyone's heard about some of these facts you see on the screen. Somebody clicked the button, they paid $5,000, sure. Somebody stole my credit card data, got stolen from Target, sure. Yeah, we're hearing about all of these things, right? I don't think what we're hearing about really is how much that is targeted at SMB. That's huge, right? In addition to that, we're probably not hearing that when an SMB gets targeted, their business shuts down. 4 days, 4 weeks, for months. Locally here in the Baltimore County public school system, where my wife actually works, their system got attacked and breached. Now they were using, here's the funny part, they were using a hybrid Microsoft environment, an on-prem system with legacy architecture and partially the Microsoft 365 system. But they didn't have measures in place to protect it and leverage these changes and features well. They were shut down for the better part of 3-4 weeks. And that's just something that hit home for me because it affected, our home life. And then the dollars, these things, a single breach incident, right? 108K, maybe it's not that large for you. Maybe that's a larger piece of data, but 10, 15K, is it worth the investment? Of course it is. Pay for the tool, pay for configuring the tool. And then one other piece kind of that is the milestone for all of this, the more and more that we move towards digital transformation, this reality starts to set in here. Now, this is a really busy slide, right? There's a lot of things going on here, but I want to start from the center and I want to work my way outward. Inside, you have the data, and I'm going to just kind of paint the picture of what this might look like for your business today. So, of course, you have documents. Of course, you do chat. You're doing emails. Some of you may do business via text message, and that's a potential risk, but let's hope you have a policy written down there. There's corporate data, maybe it's protected in a different space. That's the different kind of data. And one other piece of data that's in here but not called out explicitly is customer data, right? And so let me put that in the context of an agency. The agency is responsible for being a steward of that data, right? It's a shared responsibility model. Just like we need to protect papers with files, we have to do it digitally as well, right? So from there, the data is growing, right? And all the places, that's the second ring where you might use it or interact with it. Private cloud, SaaS, vendors, different platforms you're integrated with. Maybe some of that reaches social media, or you're accessing it remotely from personal devices, right? Those are all the different places, and access to that data is just going crazy. Well, boom, in comes regulations, right? And these are all probably things you've seen in the news. They're worldwide or country level, global policies and regulation bodies, governing bodies that are saying, hey, we need to guard this data. We need to make sure we're protecting it well, right? So let's put that into terms for insurance, right? NYCR 23, NYCRR 500, right? New York State Department of Financial Services led the charge here of trying to create a foundation for kind of a policy or a framework, right? And they said, we think this is coming. We see it coming. We're going to go ahead and light this up. And they started it. Now, a lot of you are probably honoring or aware of or using policies and regulation frameworks that are in line with that. NAIC, National Association of Insurance Commissioners, right? It's an advisory regulatory support organization for insurance agencies, right? Those folks have a framework for the NAIC model, right? That's going to help kind of guide this as well. And then there's one other layer to it, and it's the CIS, or Center for Internet Security, and National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. These are organizations that are world recognized for creating security standards and security frameworks that inevitably feed back to the policies and things that regulatory bodies say, hey, you should do. Well, here's the good news. All of what Microsoft's building directly supports CIS and NIST frameworks, and you can map it. And so 9 times out of 10, there are sometimes things that are in development. Anything that NAIC will recommend, you can probably do, likely. And there's a couple of small little holes there. And most of the time, it's just throw some more money at it and you can do it. But that's just a small add, right? Rather than a capital investment where you need to build an infrastructure to do it well. Another note on kind of the responsibility of data and how it's everyone's job. It's not my job. It's as IT alone to protect your corporate data, your customer data. It's your job. It's my job. It's our job. It's everyone's job to know what data you have, to protect that data, to limit the data loss through being aware, is this data sensitive? Should it be going out via email that's not encrypted? No, it shouldn't, right? That's everyone's job. And how do you govern your data, right? Meaning, where does the data live? For how long? When should I go back and see it? All of those things. This is a concept and a framework for something you're probably not doing well enough today. And Microsoft builds a framework, but they built a tool to help you protect and govern the data that's there based on your policy and your internal requirements. We're kind of wrapping up here, and we're almost at questions. The couple of parting notes here on specifically security and compliance. You want to stay ahead of the curve, right? You want to make sure that what you're doing today is something you can feel comfortable in saying to your customers. We're doing this, you need to do it too. The cyber liability policy says you have to, otherwise I can't insure you, right? And the cyber liability policy requirements will continue to grow. But you want to stay ahead of the curve, and you want to lead well as you lead your customers and be a good steward of what information you're caring for them. A couple of steps we've taken. We've built strategic partnerships. Those are essential for you all. Maybe it's watching NAIC in 23, NYCRR 500, and other peers right, that are leading the curve. It could be us, right, because we're aware of what's going on, and we're expert inside of the independent insurance agency space. For us personally, it's looking at our peers. It's also trusted partners like Microsoft and what they're doing, and helping kind of co-develop and work with them to building these tools for keeping the lights on for SMB for tomorrow, right? So those are a couple of pieces on the partnership. Compliance is a reality today. If you don't know that compliance is coming, it's that circle diagram I was talking about. You're probably already having to check a box. That will continue to grow. Security is the requirement of today for sure, right? That was a known beast, and it continues to be one. And then, of course, you want to constantly reevaluate your tools and technologies and partners that you're working with to grow and leverage technology in your business. For us, what that means is kind of looking at our security from a whole new perspective. About a year ago, probably longer, Microsoft started developing a new next generation security product called Microsoft Defender for Business. For about the last 6 months, we've been working closely under NDA with Microsoft to help co-design this product and doing testing in multiple clients. I want to show you just a slide about it. Pretty exciting stuff. But if you just look at the first column here and look at all these check marks, these are check marks that Microsoft wants to check for SMB today. A lot of these things, we don't even know what they mean probably, right? Or what their value is, but these are just things that will be requirements for tomorrow. Those second two columns are for the enterprise, and they go to show what plans existed and have existed for a while for enterprise. Looking at the capability and the investment they're making in SMB, there's a wise play to assume they're going to continue to do that and grow. All right, final point, and maybe this is what you've been waiting for, growth and scalability here. We've talked a bit about all these tools, and we haven't really nailed it home about how you can leverage this to grow your business. And maybe you're seeing this now. First, step one, modernize your agency. Take advantage of these tools. Continue to try to use them to reach their full potential so they can save you time and money. You can focus on doing real things like when I say real, I mean connecting with your clients, connecting with your employees, right? Just trying to do a better job. Spend less time doing the admin overhead. Be the agency of tomorrow, right? Step two, you want to increase the value of your agency, right? Now that you're a modernized agency, assuming you go down that road, you can easily scale what you have, right? You could add employees, you could add other capabilities inside this tool stack very easy. And then lastly, you want to grow for tomorrow. And what I mean by that is really twofold. Maybe you're okay with the business you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you want to change and grow the business you have better. Maybe that just means doing it more efficiently. You want 100 good clients, right? Maybe you want to grow the revenue and add employees. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to merge with other businesses and acquire other agencies to grow what you have that way, right? I'm going to tell you right now, if you're going to prepare for the future, whichever ones of those it is, you're going to pin it on Microsoft 365 for sure. Don't make the mistake of assuming you can go and just acquire other agencies and maintain their legacy systems and be profitable and not have that legacy cost to bear, right? You got to bring them together around on one whole roof. And I'm going to show you just some metrics on how we did that for one of our clients. Blue Ridge Risk Partners is a client of ours. This is where they started. They started as one agency. They've acquired and grown and merged 10 together. They went from 7 locations to 21 locations, 80 staff members to about 225. These are rough numbers. 100 devices to 400 devices. 10 different legacy environments down to one primary one. They did it all with Microsoft 365 and our help, and we're excited to see them continue to grow. But these tools allowed them to grow at a rate. They did this over about 18 months. And so that's how it worked for them. Key takeaway, Microsoft 365 is what you need to run your business. Strategic vision and partnership. and supported by the agency principals and key executives, everybody's got to have that buy-in together and alignment. The partnership to bring these things into a reality, right, is going to look different depending on the IT team maybe you have. In almost all cases, we find that the internal IT staff, have limits on the time and the things that they can do or are able to do with the tools they have. We find that it's a daunting task to understand how all of these Microsoft 365 pieces work together, right? Don't undersell your team and assume that your internal IT staff can pull this off by themselves without help, support, and training. That's the bottom line. A couple of next steps. I'm going to rush through these. I apologize. We're running over. We're basically at Q&A, but this is a 6-step process for you to take forward. Define the vision, get leadership buy-in, expect the changes as they come, support and empower your users. Know you're going to reevaluate that vision. Make sure you're pausing to do that. Consult with an expert. And then this is our process. We figure out how we can help. We try to help get started. And we delay. Those are our goals. There's more words about that on our website. And then, of course, how we can help strategic planning, cloud migrations, endpoint management, employee training and adoption, security and identity, compliance. Almost there. 3 ways you could get started if you'd like to have a further conversation. There's a link there for Tom's Calendly, help start the conversation, more info on our website, and then, of course, via email if you'd like. All right, Eleni, I think we're here. We are at Q&A.
Yes, we are. Thanks so much, Adam. Really appreciate it. Lots and lots of content. As we mentioned, there will be a recording. We're going to post it on our YouTube channel. We're going to post it on our website, and we'll send it out to you. So definitely feel free to check that out and share with other members of your team. All right, we do have a couple of questions, so let's get started with those. One of those is, does Microsoft 365 security work with Applied Epic?
Sure, great question. So in specifics, there's 2 aspects of security really. One is the user identity or login experience, and then the other one is just kind of where you're accessing that Applied Epic data from, right? So I'll speak to the first of which is really that, the login security. So right now, Applied Epic has the ability to have either a synchronization with your local server system and those usernames and passwords, or an independent user management system where you have different set of users and passwords. They're about to release in the next couple of months, generally available, the ability to integrate Microsoft 365 login with Epic. So that's around the corner. And that means you'll have a single user account to manage for each of your employees to use that system. The second part about securing that Epic data and where it's accessed, right? Microsoft 365, if you're managing the devices where you're working from, you can secure how that data is accessed as well as other data on it. And so, yes, it's compatible. And those are the 2 primary ways.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Here's another one. We already have IT in-house and our own policies and procedures. Are you able to help us improve upon them and better use Microsoft 365?
Yeah, of course, definitely. Good question as well there. Every different agency we find has a very unique, different need, right? Sometimes there's internal IT staff. Sometimes there's folks that wear multiple hats and they're sharing, doing the IT responsibilities, even though they have another primary job function. And then a lot of times we find that there are one or many vendors or partners that help support the IT. We've came alongside every one of those scenarios, and we'll continue to do that. Our goal is to help enable growth and change and transformation inside the business. So yes, we can help with those things for sure.
All right. Here's one that's a little more specific. It took us a long time to get used to Zix encryption. Do I have to change to Microsoft's, or can I continue to use Zix?
Well, I'm going to put on 2 hats. I'll put on my rip the Band-Aid hat first. Yes, you have to. You must. And then I'll say, okay, let me put the Band-Aid back on and put a little ointment under there and say, maybe you don't have to right away. And at the end of the day, we always try to explain the why you might want to take it on now, what kind of impact you have. But the reality of it is you can continue to use the existing tools you have if they make sense for your business. And Zix is one example of many other things that can complement Microsoft 365 for sure, and will play nice together in the sandbox.
All right, we have time for one more. Security and compliance feels complicated amidst the changing regulations. Is that something that you can specifically help with?
For sure. Yeah. So the couple of the things we try to cover here inside of the presentation was the general sentiment of security and compliance being something that is complicated, right? And it feels like there's more there than maybe you can take on or know how to approach. All of these things work really integrated together: security, compliance, and then governance. And so there's a process and an approach for managing these three things collectively. And yeah, for sure, we can help folks with that as well.
All right, and it looks like that is all the questions we have time for today. So gosh, thank you everybody that joined us. We hope that you found the information that we shared valuable. Adam, if you could throw up the last slide that just has our contact information. There's some different ways that you can learn more about Kitech, our managed IT services and our consulting services. There's different ways that you can reach out. Please feel free to send us a message, and we'd love to set up some time with you to chat. As I mentioned earlier, we will share the recording that should be coming out on Monday. And just a reminder to also take the survey. We'd love your feedback. We know we covered a lot of information. If there's some ideas on some other topics that you'd like to see covered, please do let us know. And just thank you. Thank you for being with us today. And Adam, for everything that you shared. We hope that you all have a great rest of your day and great holiday season. Take care now.
Thanks, everyone.